I'm a big fan of Polkadot, and I've been following the development of the project and the vision and the parachains. So it's fantastic to have you come on board and then just discuss, the vision, the product, the team, and everything in between.
Well, I'm really pleased to have the opportunity to discuss my perspective of Polkadot. I've been part of the ecosystem now for 2.5 years. And as you know, I feel like being in Web3, it's kind of more like dog years than
100%.
regular years.
Yeah, I was just asking, was 2022 your first introduction to crypto, blockchain, and Web3?
No, I had been introduced to the basics of blockchain and Web3 through my previous role working for the former UK Prime Minister Tony Blair. I was
Oh,
his chief operating officer and general counsel and worked with him for
oh wow.
almost a decade. Yeah. So, towards the end of my time there throughout 2021, there was a drive to focus on technology for development within the Institute for Global Change, Mr. Blair's organization. And so I had
Right.
begun to hear about how Web3 could impact digital governance around the world and how blockchain was the technology underlying that and how it could transform the world. So when I heard about this role at Parity, in about October 2021, I was like, oh, I know a little bit about this. Not a lot, but it had gotten me interested to learn more and to meet the people. And as soon as I did that, I was ready to jump on board in this frontier of law and regulation, which is what I love to do.
That's a fantastic story. I had no idea that you work for Tony Blair's office. So I'm guessing then you had discussions, or at least kind of a high level idea of where might the UK government be in terms of blockchain and technology in a few years' time. Were these things that were actively being discussed at the time?
Yes, they were, and not just for the UK government, but also for developing nations and global north versus global south.
Right.
So, Mr. Blair's organization focused a lot on Africa in particular
Hmm.
and Central Asia. And it was very interesting to see that the use cases in those jurisdictions could be significantly more rapidly adopted
Right.
because of a difference in approach to infrastructure that you see in some of those nations. And so there was a lively discussion about how innovation could really transform governance in Africa, for instance, across Africa. Uh,
Oh, wow. Yeah. I think there are a few technology companies, specifically blockchain companies, that are developing or planning to develop infrastructure in Africa because it's cheap and it's fair, right? You pay for what you use. And I think that was, yeah, it's coming back to me now. It was a company looking to provide internet access through blockchain technology
yes.
in Africa, on the idea that if it's on blockchain, if it's decentralized, you only pay for what you use. You pay the nodes, and the nodes can make money. So you could run your own in there and help provide, coverage for internet in Africa. Um, is the project that you were considering at the time, is that still ongoing now within the UK government?
So it was, there's a lot of discussions going on, and this is obviously kind of 3 years down the line now.
Right.
And so I think there have been so many developments in that time. And I've been focusing so much on Parity and Polkadot that I really haven't checked in on any of those previous projects, other than to see that there's still a lot being written about them and an increasing amount of knowledge and acceptance of the technology, not just in the UK, but across Europe and many jurisdictions around the world. And even in the US, I mean, you see the FIT bill being voted on by the House of Representatives. So I feel like there's very positive momentum, which is great to see.
Oh, yeah. It's definitely fantastic to see that. So, shall we start maybe if you want to give a high level overview of what Parity Technology does and what it stands for?
Sure. So essentially, Parity Technologies is the entity within the Polkadot ecosystem that is the leading contributor in terms of technology and maintaining the relay chain. So I always think of it as where many of the devs sit who have been building for ages and are maintaining and upgrading. So it's an exciting place to be. We also have the Web3 Foundation, which is within the Polkadot ecosystem, and that entity was the issuer of our native token DOT. And then there are over 600 other projects within the Polkadot and Kusama ecosystem that are alive and well today and getting stronger and stronger. So it's a very exciting place to be. It's also the world's largest DAO. So it's never boring, Andre, never boring.
Oh, I didn't realize that Parity Technologies is a DAO. That's fantastic.
Well, it's part of Polkadot,
Part of Polkadot.
yeah, which is the world's largest DAO.
Got it. I remember just the time before Polkadot had announced the live deployment of the parachains, and then they just like happened one day, and I was there just looking at the feed, and then everyone was just so excited about the possibility of parachains, myself included. I think the use cases are potentially unlimited. I remember at the time that I was thinking this is so far ahead that a lot of people are not going to get it right now. It's something that people will understand that there's a use case and a need for it once either the technology stack for the developers is there, and once people have a deeper understanding of why you might want to have a business on a blockchain or a private version of a chain.
Absolutely. And that's one of the things that attracted me to Polkadot and to Parity is that long-term vision and also the commitment to longevity, right? This is not a sprint, it's a marathon. It's
Yeah.
about changing the way we interrelate with the world, really. And for me, especially considering my background and legal and compliance and also in operations, it was very attractive because the very careful regulatory approach that I saw adopted by the Polkadot ecosystem, particularly Web3 and Parity, made me feel like it was the place that I wanted to be. And I understood even 2.5 years ago that regulation was coming. It's impossible to avoid it. But what you want is good regulation, and you want to help educate individuals. So we get in place the regulation that allows us to continue to innovate and build and change the world. And I felt like the people I met and I felt that then and I still feel that now that I'm in the right place to help do that.
That's fantastic. So, as part of your role or the legal side of your role at Parity, do you ever have discussions with legal representatives or with people within the government? Do you guys try to maybe fill in the knowledge gaps, which I'm sure are there for people that maybe want to regulate this industry but don't know how to?
Yeah, we definitely were active not only in the UK but around the world. In the US between 2019 and probably 2022, we had
Hmm.
about 50 meetings with different regulators, meetings with the Swiss regulators, um, Japanese, all around the world, trying to educate not just about Polkadot, but also about Web3 and the vision. And I'll tell you a quick story about one of my
Sure.
first interactions with a with a legislator in the UK. I was at the Houses of Parliament for an event. And this is an individual who I was familiar with from my previous job with Mr. Blair. And he came up to me and he was like, Chrissy, why have you joined an industry where they cannot even spell build and hold the right way? And I laughed, but then I thought, actually, that's a problem because if the people who are making the laws think that, they have totally the wrong perception of the amazing work and the amazing people who are in this industry. And so I really wanted to work hard to make sure that all of that hard effort and innovation was recognized, and that this vision was something that people could adopt, not just the technology, but also the vision, and to correct that perception. So I hope I have done my part over the last 2.5 years to do that. And also it's a reflection on us because it is a funny joke. It was an inside
Yeah.
joke. And for a group of people who are at heart so inclusive, it actually makes us exclusive and opaque because people feel like if they don't speak the jargon that they can't relate, and the tech is already so intimidating for many people that
Mm.
I think reaching out our hands and telling the story in a more relatable way is absolutely essential. So that's what
Oh
I've tried
yeah.
to focus on, Andre.
Yeah, and that's such a good approach to go about it. There is still, I want to say, a certain level of elitism, I feel, across some individuals in the space, where just because they know about crypto or blockchain, they feel like they can educate, well, not educate, but force their opinion on everyone. And I feel like, it's become, from my perspective, in the, like, if I look on Twitter or on Reddit, I see that it's becoming a bit harder to actually find the individuals who are in it for the tech versus the ones that are in it for speculation. I'm not sure if you've ever spent any amount of time on Reddit cryptocurrency, which is like the biggest cryptocurrency community on the internet. Back in like 2013, 2014, 2015, you had people building the projects that we talk about now. You had people building Ethereum, building Bitcoin. um, that subreddit is now turned into this echo chamber of people talking about 3 or 4 projects that they like, which are kind of interchangeable every bull cycle. And I've seen like real resistance when you have something new to introduce. Like, people seem a bit technophobic, even people within crypto. And I'm not sure whether that's because a lot of people are still trying to catch up with the technology, which is not easy to get in detail, or whether it's something else. But it's an interesting thing I've noticed.
It is an interesting thing, and I think having just experienced the crypto winter, it is
Mm.
hard to accept something new sometimes because you kind of hunker down in what you
Yeah.
know, right? And that's probably a natural human reaction. But I'm proud to say that being part of Polkadot, we're always looking towards that long-term future. And Dr. Gavin Wood actually announced JAM at Token 2049 just a couple weeks ago, and is now on a university tour around the world explaining his vision of JAM, which is the next iteration of Polkadot, so Polkadot 3.0. Now, still,
Right.
we're focusing on Polkadot 2.0 at the moment, which is to make what's currently existing even better through like
Hmm.
asynchronous backing and agile core time, elastic scaling, decentralized bridges. There's a ton of work. And I will be the first to admit, I will defer to my absolutely amazing engineers that I work with to provide more details. But, I know a bit about what they're working on, and really appreciate it. I mean, just
Hmm.
for instance, asynchronous backing was tested on Kusama in April and
Hmm.
came live on Polkadot in the 7th of May. And it's already quadrupling the computing time per block. So we have a 10 times increase in throughput as a result. So
That's massive.
it's massive. And block production is going from 12 seconds to 6 seconds. So it's actually outperforming things and metrics that we originally thought would happen. So it's really pleased to see that work being recognized and being successful. And then a lot of the other upgrades that I mentioned are going to be rolled out over the next couple weeks and months, some of which have already been tested on Kusama. So it's I'm proud to be part of this group that isn't afraid to look to the future and do new things. And I
Yeah.
try
Oh,
to help that Andre as I can from a general operational and legal perspective.
no, I appreciate the overview on this, and I was just gonna say that like people that are very like technophiles or tech forward are some of the most optimistic people that I've ever had the pleasure of talking to.
Absolutely, 100%. And I also, one of the things that I love about this world is I've learned to look at the engineers as artists because they're
Mm.
creating and they're innovating and building, and their medium is not uh, bronze or clay. It's coding, and that is a really exciting group of people to be around, and it's inspiring. Now, also sometimes I'll be honest, that comes with an artistic temperament as well. And, and when I, in my capacity, am delivering some constructive feedback, I always have to be mindful of that because it's a passion project, right? It's your creation. So I always keep that in mind and be respectful.
Yeah, well, I think there's some people that get into programming and development because it's a good career and they've got prospects and they've got a future. But a lot of people just get into it because they love nerding out on this technology. They love building stuff, tinkering with stuff.
Yeah.
It's just you're not doing it in the garage with your tool. You're doing it on a computer using a programming language. And I find myself in that sphere. I've taught myself several programming languages, pretty much from scratch,
Absolutely.
because I just like doing it. I don't expect anything in return. It's just the kind of process that sometimes centers me. Sometimes you'll hear swear words that you thought never existed before when I'm in front of the computer and I code stuff. But it's a balance, and it's fantastic to kind of just have the possibility to explore this.
And I can relate to that because I quickly realized when I first joined that I need to understand that tinkering mentality a bit more. And so I went on our internal kind of Parity and Polkadot podcast, and I said I'd
Hmm.
be someone's coding Padawan. And I got a call up from one of the OGs, and he was like, Chrissy, if I can teach you programming, I can teach anybody, which is true. So he taught me a little bit of Ruby on Rails. I launched my own web app. That is the
Oh wow.
extent of what I've done. But I think I came up with a few new swear words as well, Andre.
It's inevitable. I feel when it doesn't work, it's so easy to get caught into why doesn't it work and just spend 3 hours in front of the computer obsessing over it rather than going out for a 5 minute walk. I've done that too.
Oh,
I've
yeah.
had a 5 minute walk. I come back and suddenly, oh, that's it's so obvious. This is the solution.
Yeah, exactly. And when you see what Sinatra doesn't know that ditty or whatever, like, oh, not again.
100%. So I also meant to get a little bit into the differences between Kusama and Polkadot. I know about Kusama. I know why it was developed as a project, but you've mentioned that there's some of these new developments like asynchronous blocks
Mhm.
were tested on Kusama first. I kind of know that Kusama is supposed to be a test bench for different projects, though I didn't know whether it's the developers or the node validators or the end user that's meant to be doing the testing. So,
So
yeah.
Kusama, I think of as our canary network. That's generally how we explain it. So it's can be used for anyone doing anything. So all the use cases that you would see on Polkadot can be tested on Kusama, and it really is a great way for people to try out their ideas in a safe environment before it goes live. So it's an important part of what we do and how we
Hmm.
operate. So we always, as you heard, I'm always like, well, asynchronous backing came out on Kusama first. Agile core
Right.
time, it's on Kusama. Like it's part of the expected life cycle of what we do. And I would encourage people to check it out. And it is unpredictable, and inherent in a canary network is, hey, you know, enter at your own risk, really, and be
Yeah.
ready for anything. But I think that is also exciting.
Right. So it's presumably then easier for someone to interact with the code base and community if they wanted to make a pull request or make a change to the governance of it, or anything that has to do with the core of Kusama.
Yes, yes, it is. Although, under OpenGov, which is the governance mechanism for Polkadot, we also have the ability to vote on any changes to, the basic code,
Yeah.
and those are automatically enacted. So it doesn't go through any kind of clearinghouse or centralized authority for changes to be enacted. And I think Kusama, it's a bit looser, but still, that's one of the reasons why we're really proud of OpenGov, is that it gives you that ability to make decisions directly for Polkadot.
Right. And is the governance relatively similar to the Polkadot governance? I remember reading about Polkadot governance, and please correct me if I'm wrong, because that was a few years ago, and I may have forgotten some details. But it works based on super majority. Insofar as 66.6% of nodes agree on something, then that's considered a valid vote.
So there's
Hmm.
different tracks for voting. And I would have to get you, I must admit, I can't remember the exact percentages off the top
Yeah.
of my head right now, but I can definitely get you the details. But how Kusama and Polkadot work are very closely interrelated. But what I would say is definitely focus on the full on chain governance that is active in Polkadot in the moment. And that's been active since June 2023. And it's basically one dot equals, one vote. And that's a whole nother discussion about how that process works. But uh, it is a very lively community and debate around all the different proposals. And I think there are 95 right now that are currently um, under discussion. And
Right.
I think since June um, 2023, we're now like at 800 and something proposals that have been discussed on various topics, ranging from the very technical to sponsoring Inter Miami, which is Lionel Messi's team and David Beckham's team. Also sponsoring a car at the Indianapolis 500. So, and then every project and parachain in between. So it covers a wide gamut, and certainly Kusama does not have that same level of activity. So that's why I'm directing you to Polkadot and OpenGov rather than necessarily Kusama.
Right. No, and that makes perfect sense from that perspective. And tell me if this is getting a bit too technical, but Polkadot, right, was built with Substrate,
Yes,
and Substrate is also the technology stack that you as a developer would be using to create your own custom blockchain with its own rules.
correct.
Um,
I
so,
always think of it as, and this, please forgive me, everyone who is very technical, but I always think of it as like the skeleton, right? Like,
mhm.
and, it's what you build on with muscle and tissue in order to build out the body of, whatever you are building. So it's those fundamental building blocks.
Right. And would a chain potentially so let's say it's a chain that's not necessarily built with substrate or on substrate. It's an existing chain. Is there possibility for that to connect to Polkadot using a different protocol or a different mechanism?
So, I mean, this is where, are we getting into the world of WebAssembly and EVM, and that conversation.
Yeah.
Because I must admit that's where we get beyond my technical ability, um, and I would hate to say something incorrect, especially because I know this is a hot topic for discussion at the moment. But certainly, we have always focused on WebAssembly in the past. But there
Yeah.
are certain parachains that focus on WASM and also EVM.
Right. Yeah. The reason I ask is because obviously Gavin's the co-founder. Gavin Wood's the co-founder of Polkadot. He's also co-founded Ethereum. So I'm wondering if that was built, if Polkadot was built in mind to be potentially integrated with the EVM to some extent, or whether that was never part of the scope.
Well, it's certainly something, as I said, that is a hot topic for
Yeah.
discussion. And there is currently a new technology that enables trustless bridges into other ecosystems.
Right.
And the first such bridge is called Snow Bridge, and it's a general purpose Polkadot and Ethereum bridge that is currently, I think, tested on Kusama as well. So, and it's going to go live very soon within Polkadot. So I'm hopeful that this month, and it's just being evaluated. And I mean, it's going to enable the ERC20 token transfers and smart contract calls. So it's coming, and it's very exciting. And I am definitely not the most educated person to talk about it, and will defer to my esteemed and knowledgeable colleagues.
No, that's fantastic. And that is huge having ERC20 as part of the Polkadot ecosystem. It's fantastic. Something I've always liked about Polkadot is just the project and the momentum's always there and it just keeps tagging along. I've seen other projects that have periods of intense hype and then nothing for, a long period of time. But like Polkadot, there's always seems to be something happening there. And you've also had, I think, a few recent events. Haven't attended anyone, but any one of them, but I'd very much love to.
Oh, well, please join us in Brussels in June for our Decoded event, which is our annual event that is for anyone in the Polkadot ecosystem or who wants to join. Or there's the Web3 Summit in August in Berlin, which we haven't had since, I believe, prior to COVID. I think it might have been 2019.
Oh wow.
So it's coming back for the first time. And I think it is going to prove to be a very exciting gathering of different people across Web3, which it has been in the past. So there's a few coming up, and I'd love to see you there.
Oh yeah, I'm literally just making a note. I didn't realize Web3 Summit is coming back. I'm
It
super
is.
interested in that. I might get my tickets right after this recording.
Wonderful. Back by popular demand.
Oh no, that's great. That's what you want to hear. Um, Before we started the recording our conversation, you mentioned that DOT is the only token within the top 30 that's not been classified as security by the SEC. Do you want to talk a little bit about that and how that's possible?
Sure. So, as I said at the beginning, one of the things that attracted me to Polkadot was the careful regulatory approach, which of course is something that would appeal to me. And certainly over, like I said, a from 2019 onwards, there was regulatory engagement throughout the world, but particularly in the US. So when DOT was issued, it was done so in accordance with the US federal securities laws. And that was not an easy process, and
Right.
one that was entered into so we could ensure the longevity as we saw it at that time of the technology. So, if you cast your mind back to 2019, that was when the framework had just been issued by the US government, by the SEC, actually. And also, the Telegram case had just come out. So, would we have done the same thing today as we did in 2019, 2020? I don't know, but hindsight is 2020,
It
actually.
is. Always is.
So the decision was made, as I said, to issue DOT in compliance with the US securities laws, and also really focus on decentralization and DOT being a utility token. And so these have been really consistent concepts. And I think as a result of that, of course, beside Bitcoin and Ethereum, and take out the stable coins, but there were 70 different tokens that were listed as securities by the SEC in their various actions over the last months. And DOT has been omitted from that list. And that is not an accidental omission in our view.
Right.
Uh, and we feel very strongly that the work we've done has been important for DOT to be viewed in that way. But also, we applaud the industry testing the legal limits, not only for themselves, but for the regulators as well. So, within Polkadot, we are always believing in a multi chain world. We are not about tribalism, we're about interoperability. And so, we say this about DOT not being listed as a security, and that is the intention from the outset since 2019, but equally applauding the rest of the industry for getting certainty for all of us, because that is something that is necessary, I think, for this industry to be sustainable for the future and what we all want to see and to achieve our goals.
Oh
So
yeah.
I it's the frontier of law and regulation, which is what drew me to it in the first place. But be careful what you wish for.
Wishing for a good regulation, I think that's probably a good thing in everyone's mind. Though one of the thing I like about this industry is that you have companies with very different beliefs that operate in the same spectrum. You have Parity and Polkadot that are very considerate with the regulatory framework, trying to do everything by the books, and then you also have things like Tornado Cash or other protocols, which they're in and of themselves they're not malicious, right? It's just they're a tool that is being used in a certain way, just as anything would. And it's interesting to see that even though the code itself, there's nothing illegal, there's no law that says this code is like evil code. The main developer of Tornado Cash still got 5 years in prison, sentenced to 5 years in prison, because he just wrote that protocol, which other people have used. um,
Yes, it's Tornado Cash is obviously something we've been following closely for some time. And I mean, there are a lot of different factors, I think, that went into that judgment. And certainly developer liability, being that Parity is where many of the devs sit in Polkadot ecosystem, is something that's very much at the forefront of our minds. And I think, yeah, I do think code is free speech, right?
yeah.
And much like you don't hold phone companies accountable when criminals pick up the phone
Yeah.
to do something criminal, you shouldn't be held to different standards, right? Just because it's an app that we're talking about. Equally, as an industry, we should be aware that we have certain obligations, I think, and principles, and we should be mindful that we don't want to encourage criminal behavior.
Of
We
course.
can't. So there's got to be a balance here, and I hate for the industry to be tarred with the same brush as, say, same Sam Bankman-Fried and
Of
FTX.
course.
It's just one bad actor is not indicative of an entire industry. And the US attorney actually in that case said something that I think really resonated with me, which was the technology is new and the faces are new. But what Sam Bankman Fried was doing was age old, and that's lying, cheating, stealing, and being negligent. I think there are other examples where people are being penalized when they weren't purposely engaging in bad behavior, like SBF did, for instance. And
Yeah.
that's not right. That's not fair. That's not justice, which of course is something that is near and dear to my heart.
Yeah, of course. Well, the thing that drew my attention, I was familiar with the Tornado Cash protocol and the creator, but what drew my attention to the sentence was the fact that he he was found guilty of money laundering rather than enabling money laundering, rather than creating the software. He like had this sentence put on him based on what other people have used the software for, which I thought that doesn't feel like the right sentence. If you wanted to sentence the guy, okay, just call the code illegal. Like, don't sentence him for money laundering when
I
he
feel
didn't
like
do
they
that.
thought he could have done more and was
Yeah,
aware of some of the activity and didn't do anything to stop it. So that's
right.
where uh, I think it's layered, and I'm not sure that we've seen all the
Mm.
testimony. But I do agree with you with the principle that you set out, generally, which is, uh, some there is a limit to what we can do as an industry to stop people misusing what you're building. And that's true of every industry. So,
100%. And it's a decentralized, trustless system that in many cases there is no active moderation done because there couldn't be one. There are systems in place, there are chains or products or protocols in place that have some level of moderation. But this is a discussion: how do you moderate something that's trustless, or that meant to be free and open for everyone to use? How do you discourage these bad actors? I guess one of the reasons would just be make things more expensive so that not everyone can spam, a meme coin or something. But then you have, like you pointed out, bad actors like SBF that goes way beyond, creating a meme coin. That's almost destructive for the industry itself.
especially because he had such a high profile. And I think he damaged trust in the industry. I also think it doesn't help, and maybe I'm biased here, but I always think of what we're building at Polkadot as blockchain infrastructure, and it really is use case agnostic. Dot is a utility token. We use it for
Right.
governance. We use it for security. It wasn't issued to raise money. It was issued to secure the protocol. And
Yeah.
so, when I'm thinking of all the different use cases for this blockchain infrastructure, crypto is one. You have NFTs, you have digital identity. I mean, the list, just RWAs. It just uh, is so long that I always feel like, why aren't we talking about the decentralized social media? Why aren't we talking about gaming?
Oh
And
yeah.
that gets lost. And in the gaming world, they don't even like to think of it as Web3. And you shouldn't, but it's there and it's really exciting. So I I I feel like it's only part of our story, and we need to get better at talking about all the different use cases.
Oh
So.
yeah. Definitely. Well, there are exciting things, very exciting things happening in gaming with Web3, with blockchain technology. There are a few companies I've even spoken to. Horizon, for instance, they're building an infrastructure layer for developers to use the blockchain to store and fetch information from it. So this connects to Unity engine or other game engines, and coders and developers are able to just easily integrate with a chain. the cool thing about Horizon is that they've also had a significant investment from Take Two Interactive, which is Rockstar's parent company,
Right.
indicating that the gaming industry is thinking about it, is taking a leap, is at least giving it a chance. And that's super positive, and I love to see that.
Well, and I think it's wonderful to see it across all chains. And then for us at Polkadot, it's Mythical. So Mythical left Ethereum last
Right.
year. And, John Linden is the CEO of Mythical, and he's responsible for bringing Call of Duty to the world.
Oh, wow.
Mythical is responsible for NFL Rivals. And they're actually about to make a really big announcement at Consensus next week. And, they're on Polkadot. They're building on Polkadot. And one of the reasons why is because their project is the star. Polkadot is the foundation, but through our marketing, through our work, and through just the way we approach the tech, and also the way Dot works, they felt like that was their best place to shine and
Hmm.
attract people as well. And I find this really um, something that resonates with me on a lot of levels because I have a 13-year-old and an 8-year-old, and they spent 2 years on Roblox, right? And that because of COVID. And so they're so comfortable with gaming, their virtual identity, skins, like any kind of digital representation of value. And it's the future. And this next generation coming up, I mean, I'm a Gen Xer, right? But Gen Z, Gen Alpha, I mean, they're already there. They do this like across, all socioeconomic barriers, geographies. They're in. So, and gaming is a entryway for a lot of
Yeah.
them. So, like, it's a positive thing, and we should be embracing it. So, it's something that I never growing up with a Commodore 64 um, or my Sega would have thought was possible. But it's really inspiring to see where it's gotten to, and I'm really excited to see where it goes next.
It is, 100%. Actually, so my girlfriend teaches first year and second year students university. So she's finding, because she's been doing this for a while, so she's always kind of comparing new generations to older to previous generations in terms of like the quality of the text that they produce and the work. And from what we've seen, because I've read some of those essays as well, it feels like newer generations are more comfortable using the technology because it's so second nature to them, and maybe that comfort makes them less likely to dig into things. A lot of times you take an iPhone or a Mac or a PC, for what it is. We, or myself, I kind of had to tinker with things because things only worked half the time.
Hmm.
um, and that's kind of, I feel, the difference here is that technology and innovations are starting to appear more black box because people don't have a reason to see to peer under the hood.
Ooh, and do you think that's a good thing or a bad thing?
Well, it's a
Now
good
I'm
question.
asking you questions, Andre.
I feel like if if it was a protocol or a system that you didn't have to trust, that is
Mhm.
trustless and that is provably trustless, right? That's not a bad thing. You want the technology to do what it's meant to do. I also think that there are a lot of people that are taking advantage of this opaque approach to building technology, right? Like think about iPhone, Macs, and Apple. Like for me, I've always been a Windows user, so I'm going to Mac and I realize that there's no folders and I can't see source files. I go, "So where is all this? I need to see what's under the hood. You can't just make it so easy for me to get it because then I get confused." And
Oh,
also because of that, then you have the, you could take advantage of people's trust and introduce, and there have been cases, right? iPhone has been purposefully slowing down new iPhones in order to force people to get new iPhones. Like, I feel trust is always broken when money is part of the discussion or is on the table. if you're talking in terms of DAOs or blockchain, maybe that's the answer. Maybe that's what we need to stop, abuse of trust, because there doesn't have to be any trust.
It's such a fascinating discussion, and we're going down a road we didn't anticipate. But I just spoke at a Tech GC panel about 2 weeks ago on how blockchain and AI were the new power couple, and
Right.
how blockchain provides guardrails and restores trust. So going back to that, that trust point
Yeah.
uh, in AI. And then you're like, well, it's a trustless system. You start to get
It's yeah.
in like a really interesting philosophical discussion. And that's probably one for another day, another discussion. But I feel like, part of the reason why we are all attracted to this area and to disruptive tech or emerging tech is for these very questions, to try to answer them. And by answering them, sometimes it does mean that those who come after us don't have to think about it. And um, I'm not sure that's always a good thing, because I think you maybe lose something in um, it being almost too easy.
Yeah.
Um, and so I hear you on those points. I'm not quite sure where we would draw the line. Um, and I think probably some people won't care at all because they just want it to work. They just want to pick up their phone and they just want it to work.
Yeah.
Um, Others of us are more inquisitive and curious and maybe skeptical and do want to be able to have the opportunity to dig. So I would just want to encourage that curiosity as much as possible in whatever situation. And it takes time and effort and that desire. But I think maybe just talking about it is enough to hopefully make people curious and look around and say, why does it work this way?
Oh
So
yeah.
that's a good thing.
It's definitely a good thing, and I think trust, or not necessarily trust, but your ability to go in and figure out how this thing work, or to understand how this thing works, um, it shouldn't necessarily be, something that you have to do in order to be able to trust this system, this product. You should be opt-in. I should be able to be like, okay, I'm curious about this thing, I want to understand how it works. I don't understand how a washing machine works in detail, or a car, or like, but I don't have to, because I trust the car to do its job. I don't go and open the hood and then go and look at all the batteries and the wires sticking out that are coming from the ECU, and then looking at every single log that my car produces. I would expect any piece of tech to just do its job, but invite you, or be transparent enough to kind of allow you to peer under the hood if you wanted to. Be like, hey, okay, these are the things that make this thing work in the way it does. You can trust it because this, and this, and here's documentation, and here's a community, and here's a knowledge base for to satisfy your curiosity. Um, that's not something that I see with, again, Apple or a lot of other devices. They're just, here's the product, buy it, be happy, and buy it again next year, please.
Yes. And I think just making sure, like you said, the information is available for those who are curious. But it's funny because I was a Windows user for 20 years, and to date myself. And when I moved to Parity, I suddenly had to go on a Mac, and I was like,
Yeah.
yeah. And it was, and now 2.5 years in, I'm much more comfortable with it, and but it was quite an adjustment, and I had many of the same questions that, yeah, like the lack of folders. I was like, what? What's happening?
You guys don't have folders? How do you
Yeah.
delete stuff?
Yeah. How do I find things? How do I move things? Okay, you figure it out. But it is an adjustment. So,
Yeah.
and I try to uh, keep my mind open as much as possible with these things, and just also from a legal perspective and a regulatory perspective, having the documentation to back up what's been built, to explain it, to show how it works, how you can troubleshoot things, that there's been audits and, really independent reviews of before and testing before things are released are all important to show that care and diligence have been taken. And also, there's the ability to look back and make changes if necessary. So if we take it back to, with my legal and kind of regulatory
Mhm.
hat on, that type of attention to detail is absolutely vital. So where there's that rigor, it's a positive thing.
Right. And is that how the inner workings of Polkadot, is that how Polkadot works behind the scene, or Parity rather than Polkadot, focusing on the company itself? Let's say you have a big update to push on Kusama or Polkadot. Does that get reviewed by a legal team? Does that get, or is the legal framework in which you guys work right now clear enough that you don't have to repeat the process?
So, generally speaking, where legal would get involved is if there's a question about whether it's GPL3 or Apache or Mozilla at this point, right? So,
Right.
there's a separate audit process. There is a separate process for the requirements documentation, and that generally doesn't require legal oversight. There will be strategic discussions at a leadership level, and that's usually led by our CEO Bjorn Wagner, or our head of engineering, our vice president of engineering Pierre Robert. But we're all involved in understanding the strategic direction, and also, there's wonderful engineering leads who are helping support and
Hmm.
have the appropriate rigor in place um, to measure what matters, to use a Google phrase, and John Doerr and OKRs, which I think are, again, that kind of um, approach to thinking about the work, why you're doing the work, and then delivering and also following up on the work is very important.
Oh yeah, 100%. So going back a bit to the idea of governance and the idea of freedom to create the things that everyone wants to create, on Kusama or on Polkadot, um,
Mhm.
is there any level of moderation or any kind of oversight over the over parachains? Maybe anything that they can implement or things they're not allowed to implement, and what happens if they do implement those things?
So it really is down to the community voting
Right.
on um, who's involved in the ecosystem, what changes are made to the core features, how the treasury funds are being used, whether that is, for instance, to sponsor a new project or enter into a new partnership. So that voting process basically decides, and there's no moderation. It's like who has the voice and how you decide to vote and use your dot. Now, in order to provide some independent views on what's happening through the OpenGov process, there are a number of individuals who have been designated as decentralized voices who can provide their own opinion. But some people delegate their votes to entities within the ecosystem. But if if the community votes, the decision is made and it's enacted, and it's a lively debate. And people are actively tracking the yays and the nays, or the ayes and the nays, through Polka Assembly, which is a wonderful tool that we have in order to monitor that whole process. So it's, participation is important.
Of course. So does that apply for anyone that wants to create a parachain on Polkadot? Do they have to get some approval, some voting approval if they wanted to launch their, let's say, a hospital wants to create a private chain to host their data, um, would they be subject to this to community voting?
Well, it's what they do is there is an auction for a slot on the relay chain.
Right,
And so that's how you actually get the block space. You engage in this auction process, and if you win the auction process, then that slot is yours. So it's that's something that is actually going to be a little bit different in the future, where we basically you know change through agile core time. It's basically the purchasing of block space rather than a
hmm
slot on the relay chain, and or more accurately, core time, as we call it. And you can purchase um, different amounts on a monthly basis. You can purchase in block. And it's going to, I think, revolutionize the way that people use Polkadot because, I mean, if you only want one block, that's all you have to buy, right?
right.
And of course, you'll want more than that, but it will enable the tinkerers of the world to play around as well as the more developed projects. It will not negatively impact the current parachain model, but it will open up Polkadot's cores in a more user friendly way. And that's for any size and any use case. So that is being tested on Kusama and coming again soon.
That's fascinating. I just feel like every governance decision is being given so much care in this ecosystem, in the Polkadot and Kusama ecosystem, and it's lovely to hear you talk about how how all of this is being handled. But since you're so familiar with the legal side of things, are there any legal insights that you could provide regarding maybe the direction of the industry in UK and abroad as well?
Well, it's obviously a time of reflection and also a time of change because 10 of the top 25 most populous countries in the world go to the polls this year. And also the world's biggest trading bloc, which is the EU. So, in a time of political change, obviously that can have a huge impact on all industries because different political parties will have different approaches. And actually, just yesterday in the UK, Rishi Sunak called
Yeah,
elections in July, right? And people thought it was going to be the autumn. Uh, so it was a little bit of a surprise. And US in November. And there are a variety of other countries around the world going to vote. And I think by the end of 2024, we will have a much better idea of the direction of travel in some key places around the world. I mean, you also have MiCA coming into effect in various member states in the EU, which will give certainty. And I think that is the key
what is
word.
Mika?
MiCA is the EU legislation that relates to digital assets. And
Right,
so it provides a path for digital assets to be and to be recognized within the EU.
got it.
So, yeah, it's was voted on last year and is being enacted by the member states right now.
Right.
So it It basically, I believe that those countries who can provide certainty to the industry, so it can be built into business models, uh, then those jurisdictions, those countries will have a competitive advantage. And because what they are doing is they are encouraging innovation and tech that we see today will just continue to evolve and get better and better. And so, if you're at the forefront of that innovation and you're attracting that, that's a positive thing for your people, for your society, for the the greater world. So some political parties don't see the value in what we do, and others do. So let's see who gets in office. Let's see what decisions are being made. And then I think we will know where the industry is best served in order to drive adoption and be successful. I'm hopeful that it's all positive around the world, but as we've
We'll
seen
just have to
since
see.
2016, you know, it's it's not predictable.
It's not predictable. No, it's not. But at the same time, though, I feel like technology has always been such an important part of driving the species forward, driving what it means to be a society and what it means to relate to other humans in time, that you can't really put a stop to innovation and technology. At some point you will find its home, maybe even if let's say it won't be the US, you'll be somewhere else, and you can't really stop digital barriers unless you turn into some kind of totalitarian government, which I don't think a lot of people want that. So I think it's in every country's best interest to allow these companies to develop, to grow, and to educate the people rather than take away from what it could be like a great learning experience and a paradigm shift from the current system to a potentially new one. I know that both RFK and Trump have expressed their interest in blockchain and Bitcoin. I don't know whether it's because it's becoming, hype and the prices are going up and they're jumping on the bandwagon. I also don't know how much power they have to change the current registrators that are underneath them. It's not like they're going to have oversight over everything. There's a lot of people that are still going to stay in their current roles with the same opinions as before. So it's really a complex matrix there.
It is a complex matrix, and I think only time will tell. And I do know that across all different countries, there have been so many very good people who have been active, whether it's through blockchain associations, crypto associations, um, through uh, courts litigating certain topics, and through just general dinner conversations and educating people about the value of what we do. And I feel like that has only increased in speed, and the content has improved so much, and the use cases have grown in the 2.5 years that I've been involved, that I feel like it really I'm very optimistic for the future.
Yeah,
So
as am I, and
yes.
I'm sure it will end on the right side of history. Things just have a way of arranging themselves in that way. I think there was I don't remember who said it, but there was a mathematical formula saying that complex systems are more likely to evolve into a higher order rather than descend into chaos. So a new stack of technology, of innovation, it's not going to disrupt society in a way that would be detrimental. It's more likely to bring benefits to society, and I think that's what it's all about. And I also think that you guys are doing an amazing job at Parity and Polkadot and Kusama. And just wanted to give you a bit of time if you wanted to shout out the socials, or let us know if there's any new things coming up this year, 2024, maybe 2025, for Kusama and Polkadot, that people should be paying attention to in this, especially.
Sure. So I think obviously the Web3 Foundation, Parity Technologies, Polkadot are all very active in every community that you can think of. And there's so many different projects within Polkadot. As I said, there are over 600. So I would be doing a disservice to all the projects that are active if I tried to call out too many. So I'll send you a list after, because
Sure.
we are active in every use case, from the digital identity, and we're involved with Deloitte, through to, as I said, gaming, um, depends. It's just, what you would anticipate. And also, we have something called the Decentralized Futures Funding Program that's in place. It's open to anybody who wants to build within the Polkadot ecosystem. And it was actually put in place in October of last year. And it's run by the Web3 Foundation. And it's a grant program of 45 million US dollars.
Oh, wow.
It's been running since January. It will, right now, it's scheduled to close in June. But if you are working on a project that promotes Polkadot and the idea of decentralization, and a world based on truthful rather than trustful interactions, then that is the place for you to go to get some funding for your project. And I think that's in addition to our treasury. So it's separate to our treasury in a separate process. But just wanted to remind people that that's there. And also join us at Decoded, and join us at the Web3 Summit, which are coming up this summer. In July, that's Decoded in Brussels. In August, that's the Web3 Summit in Berlin.
Fantastic. I love the difference between truthful and trustful. I think that was very well put. Um, Thank you
That's
so
our
much,
vision.
Chrissy.
That's our polka dot vision.
No, it's very well put. It's so succinct, but very, very powerful. Um,
Well, thank you.
Thank you so much for coming on. I've had an amazing discussion, and thank you for the overview and for the detail. And I wish you guys all the best. I'm gonna keep following the various projects and the development of Polkadot and Kusama. And I may just see you at the Web3 Summit in August.
Wonderful, Andre. And listen, thank you again for having me. It has been uh, a discussion going down roads I did not anticipate, but I love that, and would welcome the opportunity to chat with you in London, or at the Web3 Summit, or any other time. So, and I have really enjoyed your Proof of Talk podcast, and will continue to listen. And I'm just pleased that, you know, a lawyer from Charleston, South Carolina, has been included in the esteemed lineup that I see.
Oh no, thank you so much, and thank you for all the kind words. Yeah, I would definitely, yeah, love having a chat in more detail, either London or at the Web3 Summit, or even doing this again maybe sometime next year, and check in on all the progress that you guys have no doubt done by that point.
Absolutely. It's going to be an exciting 2024, definitely, with Polkadot 2.0, and then looking forward to Polkadot 3.0.
Brilliant. Well, thank you
Thank
so
you.
much, and have a nice day, everyone. Bye.